So, I want to introduce our first speaker. As you know, we're in the Adult Creative Living Options workshop, just in case you want to make sure you're in the right place. And by the way, with just two quick housekeeping things, all the buses are back, so if your kids were out at the event, then the sibling event, they've all returned. And then the second piece is to please remember to do your survey. Hopefully you've downloaded the app. There's a quick click, and you can just give us some feedback. We'd love to hear that. Our first speaker is Kathy Bottini, who graduated from the same high school I did. I just have to say that because it's like so cool. We're from a town this big in upstate New York, so that was a great discovery. And I'm supposed to be introducing her because she's going to discuss her son's living in an agency-run group home, but I also happen to know it's her birthday. So I thought we could like sing really fast. Yes? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Kathy. Happy birthday to you.
So sweet. Thank you. So sweet. Wow, I have to say, I can't think of a better place for me to be spending my birthday than with you folks. So thank you very, very much. Because if I was home, I can tell you there would be nobody singing happy birthday. Except, of course, for my husband. So let me start off with that, yes, my name is Kathy, and my husband, Joe, who is sitting in the middle there wearing his green shirt, giving me moral support, are the very proud parents of two boys. Our Christopher is our PMSer, and he is 37 years old. I always have to stop and do the math because I keep on forgetting how old he is. And our Kevin, who is our typical son, and he is 28, and he's a middle school social studies teacher. So let me start off by saying this is very difficult. If I was to be telling anybody else's story, it would be a piece of cake. But to stand and talk about your own child is just incredibly hard. And my focus is also going to be on making the transition from one wonderful group home where life was good and you felt completely at peace to then having to make a very painful decision as to whether or not you're going to bring your child back home or make a transition to another group home. Let me just say that the reason for that switch was caused by regression. It had nothing to do with the group home, but had to do with the effects of regression. So I'm going to try to remain focused, pretend I'm talking about somebody else's child, but if I choke up, please forgive me. Okay, so here we go. We're growing up, and we're growing up with PMS, and it's Christopher's story. So here he is, the handsome guy with the beard and the mustache, sitting on the floor in the living room. As I said, he's 37 years old. He was only diagnosed at the age of 29, and this was in 2010. And we always knew that there was something there. We even did genetic testing in the late 80s, but we were too early for it. And I have my typewritten genetic report showing that all is good, because back then there were no computers and all of our reports were typewritten. And Christopher participated in early intervention. I think he started at the age of 3. He received PT, OT, speech. He did Special Olympic sports, Challenger baseball, scouts, therapeutic horseback riding, the whole 9 yards. His life was very good. All right, so here we go. So Christopher had a circle of friends that he knew from the community, that he either knew from school or from rec programs, and we were very fortunate because Joe and I had no clue what we were doing. We were just along for the ride. We needed someone to hold our hand and tell us what to do and when to do it. And I was lucky because these folks had the little hand on the back and would say, Kathy, have you signed up for your service coordinator yet? And I would say no, and they would say, here's the number that you need to call, and here's who you need to talk to, and here's what you need to say. Because if I didn't have these people helping me, I don't know where I would have been. So the bad. As Joe and I were quietly working on this, I just could not think how to put the words together to explain to Chris what we were doing. Christopher was extremely verbal, very cognitive, fairly independent. You know, he was able to come home from school on his own or from day program on his own, get the mail from the mailbox, the paper from the paper box, up the driveway, put the dog out, get himself a snack, and park his tuchus on the couch and watch whatever TV show he wanted. So to try to have this conversation with him is, how do you tell him this without him thinking that we no longer loved him and he was no longer part of our family? I could not think of it. And I need to say, every family has their roles, and in my family, in our family, that was my role. That was not a conversation that Joe was going to have. That was up for me to do. So how do I have this conversation without thinking he was no longer loved? So here we go. This was the day I hit the lottery. I never again need to play a lottery ticket because I hit this day. It was a snowy day. They dismissed a program early, and I was at work, which was probably about an hour away. My husband was also at work because he plowed when it snowed, and our typical son was making his way home from school. So Chris gets home from day program before we do. Gets the mail, gets the paper, walks up the driveway. I walk in the door after a horrific drive home, and there's Christopher greeting me at the door with this magazine in his hand, and he is putting it in my face, saying to me, "My friend Eddie is moving into a home. I want to move too." I did not have to worry about having this conversation. Now, it's important to note that if I had gotten that magazine, if it was delivered on a Saturday, I would have hid it, because that would have meant he would have seen the picture, he would have put two and two together, he would have asked the question, how do I have this conversation? I am never buying another lottery ticket because I don't need to. I hid it that day. Hand to God, that's what happened. Okay, so here we go. So life is good. Chris moves into Hibernian House in Pearl River, for anyone who's familiar with Little Rockland County, New York. So we moved, yeah, you are. He moved in his early 20s. He lived there until his late 20s. It was like a frat house without the beer. There was always a party because we knew the families. If somebody had stopped in and saw Christopher, you'd get a phone call, a message. I saw Chris, he was playing basketball. I saw Chris, he was eating a bagel. I saw Chris, he was taking a nap. It wasn't all sunshine and roses, but it was definitely a good place, and Joe and I slept easy knowing he was well taken care of. And it was good until it wasn't. So Christopher graduated from high school at 21. That's in New York State when you age out. And you could see that he was starting to get a little bit stressed and a little bit anxious. And he wasn't the same fun-loving, chatty jokester that he was. Frankly, at times he was down and unpleasant. You almost didn't want to spend time with him because you didn't know which Christopher you were going to get. He could be fine now, and 10 minutes later, not so fine. He started to sleep a lot. He wasn't eating as much, and we just didn't know where to turn to. And luckily, Venture worked with us to help find the cause because they were just as perplexed as we were. And they had said, as we were going through this medical review, they said, let's repeat the genetic testing. And the control taking, Mom and me said, why are we even bothering? We've already done it. Nothing came up. We're wasting our time. Let's move on. But guess what? They repeated the genetic testing. They found Phelan-McDermid syndrome. And I found it to be a relief because finally I had a diagnosis. Finally I had a name. I wasn't just other. It wasn't just global delay. There was a name so that when I spoke to the doctor, they didn't look at me as if I was making this stuff up. But when they told us Phelan-McDermid syndrome, they told us it's only Phelan-McDermid syndrome, and the behavior that we're seeing was not related to the syndrome, it was related to medication. They told us two things: watch his kidneys, and I still don't know what that means, and if he complains of pain, take him to the ER. Okay. They changed meds, thinking that was going to stop the regression, but it didn't. So the regression continued and escalated. The current house he was at in Hibernian just wasn't right. It wasn't the right place for him, even though they brought in extra help. So Joe and I had a very painful decision to make. What are we going to do? At that point, we were in our late 50s, and really we just didn't have the stamina. So they presented us with moving him into an ICF, which was more staff, a 24-hour nurse, services on site, and we were back in that position where do we tell Christopher? and my heart told me to bring him back home. But I knew I couldn't do it. I knew I couldn't do it. Felt like a failure. So, once again, I hit the lottery, and his agency venture stepped up, and his service coordinator with his house director and his psychologist presented the move to him as Joe and I sort of cowered in the background. And Christopher was fine with it. He just couldn't wait. They took him to see the house. He loved it. They coordinated the physical move. They brought staff from his existing house in Pearl River, Hibernian, to his new house venture in Nanuet. And they had the old staff teach the new staff about Christopher, and they even brought in his day-hand person to be a part of it. Christopher was fine. Joe and I, basket cases. So here we go. A whole lot of steps back, but one step forward. Christopher adjusted so well. OTPT and speech is on site. He didn't have to travel to it, because if he doesn't have to travel to it, he doesn't say, that's okay, I'll pass. He'll go happily off with the person who's there to see him. There's a nurse there all of the time, as opposed to one nurse covering multiple locations. And there's even a nutritionist, which I now have to find out if it's a dietitian, because I heard that there's a difference between a nutritionist and a dietitian. Okay, so here we are today. Please know Christopher with his BFF Ernie. In all pictures, Christopher is always holding Ernie. Their body language is even the same. So 2 years later, Christopher's at Venture Inn. The gains are remarkable. He's gained a whole lot back. And he's not back to where he was, and he probably will not be. But the kid is happy. The team draws on his desire to help, and he prefers female staff because they dance and they sing and they flirt with him, and he's happy. So the takeaways, and again, note this picture, the hand on the back, those are my two boys, and Kevin's hand is on Christopher's back, helping him walk in one of those oppressive New York heat days. So the things I've learned from others: the road we're on is a long run. This is a marathon, not a sprint. You've got to save your energy. We all need help. If there's help available, consider taking it. When Christopher was in the midst of the regression, the people from Venture had told us, take our help, go home, get some rest, we'll stay with him. If there's help and you're comfortable taking it, take it. It's not a reflection on you or your parenting skills. And although there may be an initial placement that may work, the time may come when a change is necessary. And I'm telling you, if we would have left Christopher in Pearl River, or if we would have brought him home, there's no way he would have gained what he had lost. There's no way he would be the Christopher we have today. And as much as change is scary, is sometimes the best option. So the stills, he's still our family, he still has a room in our house, he's still our son, we still remain the decision makers for Christopher, he still comes home for weekends, holidays, and special occasions. A good house director matches staff with the consumers based on their likes and dislikes and make changes when appropriate. Christopher's made it very clear that there's some people he doesn't like, and they've just rotated onto another person and brought him somebody in. And especially since Christopher has lost so much speech, after every home visit, we write a short email about the visit, and it gives the staff an idea of ways to engage him in conversation. And helpful hints for a smoother transition. So this is what I've learned from other people. Write it before your child moves in, write a detailed book, and I'm telling you, the book was detailed. They knew everything about him, on what they like and what they don't like. It makes it so much easier. It prevents an issue. Every couple of weeks, the guys at Christopher's house invite a guest over for dinner. It's typically a sibling or a grandparent. It is never their parent. No parent has ever been invited for dinner by the guys. They always want somebody other than us. Keep the dialogue open with the families that are there. The families at Christopher's house, we get together every couple of months at a local diner on 304, and we have fruit, coffee, and just chit-chat in terms of what's going on, and it just sort of makes it a little bit more cohesive. So there we go. And so thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here, and we are all united in this, and everything that Joe and I do is for the love of Christopher.
Okay, I'll do the intro while we're setting up. Oh, there we are. Hey, I know that face. And another really weird thing, the first job I ever had in this field was at Venture, which is where Kathy's son lives. Isn't that strange? So, our next guest is Callie Thornton. Probably none of you really know her or Kyle. I come all the way from Missouri. And she's going to be talking about the HCBS waiver and using a personal care attendant for respite and creating a self-directed life for Kyle. Thanks.
Here, we're going to hope we can do this. Big girl pennies. My big girl pennies. Oh, God, I'm going to get bonged in the head. Okay, so I'm Kelly, mom of Kyle, and this is Sarah, Kyle's caretaker. Sarah's been with us for 3 years. We love her. If you ever want to know about poop stories, talk to Sarah. She's had it on her feet, in her hair, on her shirts. She's a really good poop cleaner-upper. Yeah, she's the best. Anyway, so Kyle's 24. When he was 20, he became increasingly aggressive and harder to handle, let's say. A lot of therapeutic holds, a lot of banging on windows. I mean, it was just horrible in my house. It was horrible at school, but the school, he went to a state school, and it was absolutely amazing, the state school. They dealt with it the best they could from 20 to 21. He graduated at 21. Is his graduation picture up there? Oh, do I have to do that? What do I do? This little thing? Oh, that's not it. Is it? Was that the next one? Oh, well, that's me and Kyle. There's his graduation. So when he was 21 when he graduated, and I had no clue what to do with him. I was so afraid. I worked full-time, Donald worked full-time, and we were just like, what do we do? Well, the school helps you transition, and they said, you know, there's a perfect placement for Kyle. It's called Choices for People, and it was an adult daycare program. So we went, we interviewed, we met with people. We decided this will be a great place. That they had a brand new one right in our county, right in Waynesville, and we were in St. Robert, which is just right there. So we put Kyle on this placement. The bus came every morning, picked him up, he was happy, they brought him home. They said, we'll do outings every day. Outings, right? That means not in a facility or in a room. Well, they were afraid of Kyle because Kyle went, and got up, went to the door, and banged on the door. What does banging on the door means? It means you want to go. We all know that. They should have known that. They said, he's just too aggressive. So they asked me to remove him. That was horrible.
You're all right.
So what I did was I picked up my panties and I went right over to the Pulaski County Board for the Handicapped. And I said, you've got to help me. She did. Sorry, I don't mean to make you cry. Don't cry, okay? Okay, Rubia, she's holding it together. Okay. So, the daycare program said you need to leave. He needs to go. So, Board of the Handicapped said, you know what? We have another program for him. I need you, and I want to get this right because I never remember this. You need to apply for the community home-based services waiver through Medicaid. I said, okay. Oh, God, it was a long process, but it's so rewarding. What we did was we filled out the application, and they helped me. I had to be interviewed by, get this right, by the Division of Developmental Services from Missouri, Department of Health, and the Rolla Regional Center. And, well, Rolla Regional Center, but it's the Missouri Regional Center. They oversee all of special needs in the state of Missouri. This division, I'll tell you a little bit about it. Division improves the lives of children with developmental disabilities through programs or services to enable those persons to live independently and productively. In 1988, the division began participating in the Medicaid home. Oh, you got to change those things, huh? Oh, there it is. I can't remember that. The Medicaid home community-based waiver program designed to help expand the needs throughout our state. So once I filled out that paperwork and I did my interviews, my application went before a board, the Missouri Medicaid Board, and they were the ones that decided, do you qualify, do you not qualify? Well, we dug up so much information, we're going to qualify for this, and we did. But I still didn't know what all this meant. So I had to interview with some administrators with what are they called? Public partners. Public partnership. They're the ones that carry the contract that pays somebody to come into your home. So I interviewed with them, and then I interviewed with some people from Medicaid. They come to tell me how the process was actually going to work. We passed with flying colors. They said, okay, this is what you have to do. You can be his caregiver, and we'll pay you 40 hours a week. You decide your salary, and you can take care of your son. I said, I work full time. I have a blessed job. I'm not going to give that up. I want somebody else to come take care of Kyle because I'll still have him at night and on the weekends. So they said, how many hours do you want? I said 50. We timed out. Oh, there's Kyle. There's Kyle. So they granted me the 50 hours a week, and they said, now you have to hire somebody. So I did it in our local community. I did an ad. It was on Facebook under jobs. So I put in a bio about Kyle, and I kind of just explained what was required of the person. I told about Kyle. I told them what I was actually needing. Sarah applied within minutes. She said, I'm so interested. And then I had two other ladies and a guy. So I interviewed. I called Sarah and I said, would you come and interview with us? So she interviewed. Kyle stood in front of her, high-fiving, clap, clap, clap. He was so excited. That was Sarah's very first day. He was so excited with Sarah, and when she left, I said, do you want to see him again? Yes, yes, yes. I said, okay. So we hired Sarah. Nobody else worked out. Kyle really didn't like them. So we hired Sarah to begin with. We put her on for 40 hours a week. We hired another staff that really didn't work out. Then we met, Gina was a friend of mine, and I asked Gina if she would participate for 10 hours a week. And she came in, and she does Mondays. Sarah does Tuesday through Friday, unless she comes to conference. The kind of things that Sarah and Gina are responsible for is they have to do charting on Kyle. And it's very important their charting to get paid. They have to do medications. They have to talk about, toilet training. They have to do food preparation and portion sizing because he's a big boy. They have to do, make sure he's swallowing and chewing because he likes to swallow. They do have to do community activities. You better put that up there. There's his community activities. He also has to do community service, which he goes to the park, picks up trash. He does his community service there, sweeping up leaves. He does a lot of community service, especially if you take him to a doctor's office, he has to empty trash. Sarah and Gina did have to get certified, and they had to certify in, and I can't find it. What was it?
CPR.
CPR and first aid.
Medication.
Medication management, that was a long course.
Neglect and abuse.
Neglect and abuse, which was huge.
There's one more.
I think there was probably something else, but I can't find my notes. I can't read and talk to you. Anyway, we've been very blessed to have Sarah in our lives with Kyle. Yeah, they have battles. They get on each other's nerves. But we just take a break, and they start a new day, and they're all happy again. And she goes to doctor appointments. She does physical therapy with him. What else do you do? Everything. This is Kyle refusing to walk. So, or play. He's sitting in the thing yelling and screaming. He's not happy. He doesn't like water anymore. So, but Sarah does this kind of stuff with him every single day. That's her and her son, or Kyle and Sarah's son, playing video games. He plays them for a few minutes until he gets mad and he throws the remote. There's Kyle washing the car. He loves to do that. And Sarah is really good on holidays. She is a total holiday person. So she takes him, gets him out, takes him out trick-or-treating, dresses him up. These are Kyle when he's in bad days. She does this stuff all over Facebook. She's amazing. And that's our story. And we love our program.
Okay. Of course, I just lost my little thing here. So our third speaker is from Oklahoma, and that is Rubia Chavez, and she's going to speak about an agency-run group home as well. So we welcome her to the stage.
It should just start and it's timed. Shouldn't it just float on through? Oh, you're going to have to give somebody else a button, let them just paste through it because I don't have a rhyme or reason. I had it all timed. Okay, I'm going to try to pull through this without crying. It's been a little emotional this morning, but good afternoon. My name is Rubia Chavez. I'm here today to talk to you about my journey through the transition process. When I was asked to speak here, I gladly agreed, and I thought I've just gone through this, so it should be easy. But the truth is, I had no idea where to start this story. So after much deliberation, I've decided to start at the beginning. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about these beginning years because that's not what I'm here for. But if there's anybody in here that wants to talk to me later, privately, I will be available. I'm shaking already. Deep breath. Okay. On a cold Wednesday night in January of 1990, I left my home with my 11-year-old daughter and a 6-month-old son. This was not unusual. I always attended the Wednesday evening service at my church. What was unusual was that I had snuck a small bag of clothing to my car, and what was also unusual was that I was not going to go to church. Earlier that week, I had contacted DVIS, and as soon as I was safely away from my home, I was to contact them again, and they were going to tell me where the protective shelter was that would serve as my temporary home. 2 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. So as you can imagine, this was not the best time in my life to be having another child. And while people close to me gently mentioned options like adoption or abortion, these were not choices that I could live with. So 3 months later, because I had a job, wasn't a great job, but it was a job. I was able to save enough money, and I purchased a house, secured a small loan to get some meager furnishings in the house, and I began slowly making a home for my 2 children and the child that was growing in my stomach or inside me. But this was a child that I was not able to form a bond with because of the circumstances that I found myself in. So in September, I gave birth to this beautiful little girl. She was perfect. Unfortunately, being a single parent, that meant I had to go back to work 3 weeks after she was born, and by 3 months of age, I was working 3 jobs. I used to jokingly tell everybody that I had 1 job for each child. I was still unable to form that bond that mothers form with their babies. I had had no time with her. I was unable to nurse because I went back to work so quickly. So she got put on formula. The reflux was horrible. She would cry and cry and cry. She wasn't gaining weight. And by 6 months of age, I put her on whole milk and baby food. And thankfully, and that was against doctor's orders, but it worked. We know now that reflux is a common problem with our children. Back then, I knew nothing about why my baby couldn't keep anything down, but she was hungry and I fed her. Now, the good thing about life is that it's very fluid. Those early days that were so hard, they eased up. I got a promotion at my job. I no longer had to work 7 days a week, 16-hour days. I was able to finally be the mother to this child that I was not able to be in her first year. Now, Ashley was a joyous child. She was happy, she was healthy, but she wasn't talking. So we went through all the typical tests. I fought the insurance company for a year and a half to get genetic testing, which nowadays is much easier, thankfully. And we were given the diagnosis of ring 22. We were also given about 3 or 4 sheets of paper that told us what it was, and we were sent on our way. Now, I can talk all day about those early learning years, but again, that's not what I'm here for today. We had the typical struggles that everybody has, learning how to maneuver the school system, but we got through it. She was happy, she was fun, she was active. We did everything with her. During her teen years, she went through regression, and it was hell. It was 2 years of hell. We could barely leave our home. And the thought of giving her up was on my mind at that time because I didn't think I could handle it. And the medication they put her on caused permanent nerve damage, and we went years without getting a smile from her. But we did end up getting a version of her back eventually. It wasn't the same, and her needs became a lot more involved. Now, during these growing up years, her siblings never wanted her in a group home. They loved her. They wanted to take care of her. They said, "Mama, you don't have to worry about anything. We're going to take care of her." But as I said, life is fluid. Now they're grown. They have children of their own. They have problems of their own. So this is no longer an option. And then time has a funny way of aging you. And as I got older, my health issues became much more severe. And I've had to start thinking about what I was going to do with my baby when I was gone. It was after surgery that I received a call from DDSD. And 15 years on a waiting list, Ashley's name finally came up to the top of this list, and we were eligible for some services. I was excited. We were going to get 24 hours a week with HTS services, which is, let me look, Habilitation Training Specialist, I think is what that stands for. Is that right, Janet? 24 hours a week. What that meant to me was I could go to the grocery store and get in, get out. I could clean the baseboards. I could, well, heck, who knows? I could do anything in that time, but it was going to give me a little bit of a break. The excitement was very short-lived. 24 hours a week, that's great, but trying to find an HTS that fit our home, that actually showed up when they were supposed to show up, or didn't quit after 2 weeks, was a problem. We tried for 3 years to get some kind of consistent help, to no avail. My health has continued to decline, and thoughts of my own mortality is now swimming in my brain. And I knew that when I die, Ashley not only loses her mother, but she loses her home. So these thoughts pressed on me heavily every day until I finally made the decision to start looking into group home setting. It took me a year to be able to say the words. And it took me 2 years to start looking. But it was about this time that while I was looking for yet another HTS, the new agency I was using called and told me they had an opening in their group home. I knew it was time, and I made an appointment. I visited the group home and was amazed. It was just like a normal house. It was beautiful. It was well kept. The girls that I met in there were happy. I watched how the staff was interacting with them. I went and visited the workshop where she would be during the day. I'm sorry. I'm going to lose it. I asked a lot of questions. I knew I could visit anytime I wanted. I didn't need to announce my visit. And trust me, I do that. I decided to move forward. We did her individual plan. The plan was put into writing. We signed the contracts, and a move-in date was set, October 16th, 2017. We moved her furniture and clothing. We decorated her room just like it was we're at home. It looked like home. It felt like home. She ran in and jumped in her bed. She was happy. Now, I can't tell you how to get through this because it's hard. I can tell you that I have to continually remind myself that I did the right thing for my daughter. In the very first days, I would visit about four days a week. And I always go at different times of the day. I don't announce my visit. I just go, I show up. I want to see what they're doing. I want to see how my daughter is. And I want to catch them off guard because you have to. You have to know what's going on. I had to know. And there have been issues that have come up. There's been some hurdles. And I deal with them as they come up. I knew there would be hurdles. They don't know my daughter. No matter what you put on that paper, it's just not the same as when you're taking care of them. And I didn't bring her home for the first 2 months. I wanted to make sure she was well established and that the group home was considered home before I brought her to my house. So we did lots of outings, but we never came to the house. Now she comes to the house. She just spent 5 days with me over 4th of July. We went to the lake, we're in the RV, we're on the jet ski, which we don't even talk about, me tipping over and pinching the nerve in my back. But, old bones. It just, get pictures of it. No. So I still see her 2-3 times a week, sometimes more. And as I work through all these issues that come up, I learned years ago that I have to be Ashley's voice. I am not bashful. Well, I am kind of shy. I just cover it well with boldness. But I don't mind going to the top at the agency and letting them know some changes that need to be made. And these changes have made great results, not just for Ashley, but everybody in the group home. So I am not a silent partner in this. I am very vocal. Ashley goes to her job, and while she may not work all day, she gets to help in the garden that they planted, and it's a wonderful garden. She's got crafts. She takes walks. She goes shopping once or twice a week. She goes to monthly dinners, or twice a month. I think they go to dinner out and sometimes movies, and then she has me for trips to the lake, trips to the ranch, or bowling, or just whatever we want to do. So for Ashley, this has been a great move. Now for me, I'm still working on that. I've been Ashley's primary caregiver for 27 years. I've been a mother for over 40. I didn't know what I was going to do without my girl, and after the crying and after the baseboards got cleaned, okay, I haven't cleaned the baseboards, but I had to figure out who I was, and that's kind of where I'm at now. I'm trying to figure out who am I. I do know that for Ashley, I've made the right decision. She's happy, she's thriving, she's still in my life. And at some point, we all have to address this issue. It's not going to be the same for everybody. The timing's not going to be the same for everybody. But it's something we all will have to address at one time or another. So I wish you all the best of luck making these tough decisions. And I thank you for letting me share my story.
Well, I need to take a breath. Our next speaker is Sue Joinson, and she's also going to speak about her experiences with an agency-operated group. Thanks.
And the clicker is where? I'm taller than other people. Thanks. I'm Sue Joinson. Some of you know of me through Emily, who is my daughter with Phelan-McDermid syndrome. She's 31. I also have another daughter who is much more significantly disabled, who is 35, has Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. I transitioned her into a group home when she was only 19 due to health problems that I had. I was in the hospital and unfortunately was forced to move her into a pediatric nursing home. At the time, I had been a pediatric nurse for many years, and at that time I actually worked specializing in children with profound medical disabilities, doing high-tech home care, working with kids on ventilators, et cetera, in their home. After Lori moved into her group home, I still had Emily at home, and I was approached, this was about 14 years ago, I was approached to apply for a position at an agency that runs group homes for adults with developmental disabilities. We run group homes, day programs, supported apartments, and employment programs. I'll be honest, at first I said, I don't know anything about tall people. I only know pediatrics. And they said, you know disabilities, you know sign language, and this is an agency that ironically specializes in adults with communication disorders. They're either deaf or they have autism or they have other reasons why they're nonverbal. So ironically, it has turned out to be a great career for me. I've been there 14 years. So I'm going to talk today mainly about my job and my role as a director of nursing at an agency that transitions your loved ones into their new home. One of my pet peeves, and Amy already heard me soapbox on this last night. One of the things that I correct families all the time, we do not put people in group homes. People move into group homes, they relocate, they have a new home. You put a dog in a home. You do not put our loved ones. So I just want to say that right now, okay? So oftentimes part of my job is that I have to sit with new families and transitions into our program. If they're coming in, oftentimes people come initially just as a day program participant. At some point early in their stay with us in the day program, I will usually sit down with them and ask, what are your plans for where your child, your young adult will live when you're gone? And very, very often I will hear, oh no, he's going to stay with me forever. And I usually pause and I say, wow, tell me your secret. And I usually get a puzzled look. And I say, well, if I could have done that, lived forever, I would have done that. So if you figured out a way to live forever and take care of your child, that's great. But you do need to have a plan. It doesn't necessarily, I always tell them, to have to be with our agency in one of our group homes. It can be with a family member. It can be with a sibling or whatever. I always encourage parents to have a plan A and a plan B, because the one thing that we all deal with, as Rubia said, life is fluid, changes happen. So that's why I titled my talk, A New Beginning, Changing Geography and Redefining Roles. Because one of the things that I found when I transitioned my older daughter Lori into a group home was I hadn't realized that my role as mother had become the lowest priority. My role as nurse to her, caregiver, housekeeper, coordinator of everything in her life was the most important role. And after she moved in and I kind of settled in for a while, Rubia, I realized, wow, I'm a mom again. So I often tell families, I need you to tell me everything you know, and it's going to take you years. So I tell families change always means adjustment. None of us know exactly what's going to happen. Job changes, marriage, divorce, moving, deaths. No one's exempt from change. The slower the change, though, it's easier to adjust. Sudden changes are very difficult. Planned changes are much easier. Emergency placements are the things that absolutely make me crazy for our clients because it's never easy. Transitions are most successful with active, positive family involvement. And if an agency that you're entertaining or you're interviewing, and please do interview agencies, if they do not seek your positive involvement, run. Because there's no way that I can know everything that you know medically about your loved one over the last 20, 30, God forbid, 40 years. You can't give that to me in a book. I love when I get those books, but there will be a time when I take someone to an appointment and they're going to ask me a question that I don't know, and then I'm going to call that family and say, okay, have you ever tried Depakote? Have you ever tried whatever? So one of the other things I tell families is moving to a new home should never be a surprise party. And I encourage our families we have our clients come, if there's been one of our homes identified, before we decide that person will move into that home, we have them be invited for dinner with those clients and spend an evening or two. And as things become more positive, then we may increase that to maybe a dinner once a week. We'll do this over the course of a few months, and then we'll do a weekend visit if possible. We also encourage the family to take pictures of the home when they come to drop off their loved one for the dinner, take down the names of the other people that might be living with them in the future, so they can introduce them and talk about them while they're working out the details of how to transition your loved one to living in a new place. After the transition, scheduled visits and unscheduled visits are important. I always tell people, you are still their family. Staff will never be family as much as we love our clients. My clients, I've been with them for 14 years. I mean, they're on my birthday card list, and but I'm not their mother. And some of them have lost their mother, and I try to pay, more attention and be more motherly to them, but I'm never going to be their family. So we often get, quite frankly, disappointed if families don't remain involved, because it's not a drop-by. You don't drop your kid and leave. The other thing that I would encourage, you see photos up there. One of the things that I've done for my daughter in a group home, and she's in a different agency, is putting up family photos that are labeled so that staff can look and show and say, oh, that's your Uncle Johnny. me, oh, that happened when you graduated from school, or conversation starters, because it's one thing to put up photos, but if your loved one's nonverbal, they don't have the ability to say, you know, they may be pointing to a picture and we don't know why they're pointing to that picture. We'll say, but if it's labeled, oh, that was your birthday party when you turned 21, or that kind of thing. Sometimes it's those little things. I love the idea of the email when someone comes for a visit. We have one of my clients who every time she went home for a weekend with her family, and by the way, when our clients leave, we don't say you're going home for the weekend, because their home is their home. We say we're going to your mother's house. Just like you would if they were in college, you go home for the weekend when you're in college. But once you get your own apartment, you don't say you're going home to your mother's. You're saying, I'm going to my mother's house. So we do the same thing. And when this client comes back, when Tara comes back, her family writes a whole big long thing, and they include pictures of everything she did over the weekend. And this girl is nonverbal, and she loves to go around and show staff, and every staff reads the book or the papers that she comes back with, and that allows us to have stories with her over the week. The other thing that's really important, especially for Phelan-McDermid syndrome moms and dads, is providing a concise medical history, not of only of your loved one, but your other family members. One of my jobs is to fill out forms when they have a new specialist or a new doctor, and if you can think about all the forms that you normally fill out on the family history, that's now my job. If you're not around or not able to go to an appointment, or God forbid you've passed on, I need to have that family history. So I have forms that I have my families fill out that gives me their entire family history. And at our annual plan meeting, I ask them to update that if there's been any family health changes. So these are those little things that you might not think about as you transition your loved one to a new home. Medications, meds that you've stopped, changes that you've made and why are important. A list of all surgeries and dates. After the move, become the nurse's best friend. Offer what has worked, what hasn't. If you are able to, attend medical appointments at least once a year to each specialist, because that helps you to stay involved, and it also helps you to give input. Also, most agencies are required to notify you at least once a year with a medication list and ask you to approve it. I recommend families that ask to be notified of any medical changes, whether medication changes, care plan changes, or whatever. The other thing I want to leave you with is your loved one will also behave very differently with staff. It doesn't mean you did things differently, but if you think about it, sometimes when you go to work, you behave differently than when you're at home, etc. So don't be surprised if your loved one behaves differently in a new home, and that may be temporary or permanent. Am I out of time? Okay, thank you.
Okay, the good news is you can always walk up to anyone who spoke today, obviously, and ask your questions and get more information. I'm sorry we're racing the clock a little bit, but I hope that you'll stay for our final speaker, Kathy. Kathy Fiscus is going to talk to us about Sunrise Village and her vision. And come on up and tell us about what you're creating.
Good afternoon. My name is Kathy Fiscus. My husband Dan and I have 2 children. Cyrus, who is PMS, is 8 years old, and our daughter Naomi is 11. We're from eastern Iowa. Even before becoming a parent, of a special needs child, I knew that the services and care provided for people with disabilities was wanting. Now I know just how much and how hard parents have to fight to provide the extra care that their loved ones need. Individuals with disabilities are often overlooked or neglected. Residential and day program options tend to be limited. Parents of special needs individuals are concerned for their children's futures. Some may say terrified. The reality of life with a PMS individual is that he or she needs a great deal of assistance with everyday activities. Most will need some sort of assisted living throughout their lives. Many PMS parents and caregivers wish to live just one day longer than their child. They fear that no one will care for their child, love their child after they're gone, be included, and this needs to change. Before Cyrus's diagnosis in 2013, our plan had been to move our family to New Zealand and start a farm. However, after receiving his diagnosis, it was painfully apparent that Cyrus was always going to need a significant level of assistance. We could not leave our support system. The thought of him someday living in a group home was absolutely terrifying. It was during this time that the idea was conceived to still start that farm, not in New Zealand, but in Iowa. It would provide a home and community life for Cyrus and for others with disabilities. This farm would be a place of peace and joy. 2016 was a very rough year for our family. Due to health issues and my husband's work schedule and Cyrus's difficult behaviors during that time, we felt like we could no longer care for him. Thankfully, with increased assistance from friends and family, we were able to eke by until summer break was over and Dan was able to get a different job. Because of that experience in 2016 and the need within the community, I realized that we needed to start working on our dream now. Many families are struggling, they're drowning, and they need help now. Our own family may even need to utilize those services sooner than we originally anticipated. In 2017, with the help of other special needs parents, one of which even is another PMS parent, I founded Sunrise Village. People tend to feel happier when they regularly have meaningful interactions with their neighbors and their friends. Sharing life together, whether to celebrate or to support, makes such a big difference. With this in mind, Sunrise Village is a nonprofit organization that will be developing an intentional community for individuals with and without disabilities. We will be an Iowa Medicaid home and community-based services provider, serving individuals with Iowa Medicaid waivers as well as habilitation services. Our mission is to create nurturing and empowering opportunities for individuals with disabilities. We believe that all people are valuable and deserve to have opportunities to be their best selves. We will create an environment that is nurturing and empowering. Everyone will be treated with dignity and given the opportunity to have a voice. At Sunrise Village, we want to provide more than just housing and activities. We want to provide a home, a family, a place where our children will be respected and empowered. We want to give parents and caregivers peace and hope for the futures of their loved ones. All homes will be set up with the safety of residents in mind. Accommodations and barriers will be put into place to help residents navigate their homes and be safe from hazards. The entire property will be handicap accessible, not just for the residents and program participants, but for visitors as well. Sunrise Village will strive to create a peaceful environment in which all residents are able to have a rich quality of life, one with which they are able to enjoy time outdoors, working with the earth and the animals and each other to produce the very food that they eat. We will care for physical, mental, and spiritual needs and encourage family involvement if possible. We will make sure that each resident receives the medical care and the therapies that they need, and all residents will be free to choose whether or not to attend any religious activities. We will provide a variety of vocational and recreational activities. Residents and the community will have many opportunities to learn about sustainable farming, healthy living, and living more harmoniously with the earth, each other, and themselves. In addition to the activities on the farm, the residents will have access to the larger community around us. Sunrise Village will strive to be as eco-friendly and conservation-minded as possible. Our vision is to have 5 to 10 homes accommodating up to 5 people in each home and available for all ages. Residents will have the option of a private or shared bedroom. Each home will be staffed according to the specific needs of the residents. In order to ensure that residents receive the care and quality of life that they deserve, all residents will undergo a thorough application and placement process that is highly individualized. Rehabilitation and vocational activities at Sunrise Village will vary depending upon the season. Year-round, there will be art therapy, animal husbandry, and gardening activities available. We will have community gatherings in homes and in our community building at regular intervals. These could be dinners, parties, dances, movies, or game nights, and fundraisers. We will also have exercise equipment available. We will have a stall at the farmers market where we will sell plants, produce, canned goods, and works of art. Every effort will be made to enable residents and day program participants who wish to work at the farmers market the opportunity to do so. With close proximity to the larger community, residents will be able to take regular outings in order to enjoy everything that the area has to offer. Our vision is to have 10 to 20 acres in Scott County, Iowa, and be within 15 minutes of a hospital to ensure easy access to emergency services. With this close proximity to a hospital, it also means that Sunrise Village will be a part of the community and not separate from it. Residents will have access to the community, and staff, visitors, and volunteers will be able to find us easily. This represents 15 acres and is just to give an idea of a possible layout. We'll have 5 to 10 3-bedroom homes for the residents, an office, outbuildings for equipment, a hoop house or greenhouse, a water reclamation system, a barn for horses and other farm animals, a chicken coop, a community building, an arts building, a guest house that would be available for visiting family or interns. We would like to have a wheelchair-accessible playground and an outdoor shelter, an orchard, and a biking walking path throughout the entire property. Our formation period is 2017 to 2018. That includes incorporating as a nonprofit and applying for 501c3, and all of that has been completed. 2018 to 2020 is our startup fundraising period. We held our first fundraiser last month, raising over $1,100. It was very exciting to see the community start to come together for our project. In 2021, we hope to acquire land and develop it as we are able. Once we have necessary facilities, we will become an HCBS provider and start offering SCL and respite services. 2022 will be expanding our programming while we are also building homes for our future residents. 2023, we look to have all programs up and running, looking to sustaining and improving where needed. There are similar intentional communities throughout the U.S. and in other countries. Not all are agricultural based. If an intentional type community is something that you're interested in, do a search online and see if there's anything in your area that is either existing or if there's a project in the works. You can visit our website for more information about Sunrise Village Project. You can follow us on Facebook as well. And as a follow-up to this session, we'll have an informal meetup tomorrow morning in Heritage Room 8 from 7:30 to 8:30. Many of the panelists from the adult session and the children's session that was before this one will be available to answer questions and have discussions about creative living options. I want to leave you with this. Be kind to yourself. You are stronger than you think. It takes strength to ask for help. If it takes a village to raise a neurotypical child, our PMS children need a whole city. Periodically, other PMS parents will comment that we need a PMS island. We are all in this together. We are here to support each other. My hope for each of you during this conference is that you will be able to cry, laugh, and leave knowing that you are not alone.
Thank you. Just one more round of applause for these very brave women. It was wonderful. Some really quick housekeeping. There is a coffee break, which I probably should have told you last, because now you won't stay to hear the rest. There is an added GI question and answer session Q&A at 5:30 in the Bennett boardroom for those of you who were not at the GI session but would like to have some more information. The rodeo dance party is tonight from 7 to 10. The silent auction closes at 10 p.m. tonight. Diane Linehan was originally listed for this. She will be at the round table tomorrow morning talking about her creative living too. And please don't forget to do your survey and have a great day. Thanks, everyone.